Financial Group.
This is Chicago's Morning Answer with Dan Proft and Amy Jacobson on AM 560. The Answer.
Top of the morning, Dan, and in for Amy J this morning is Scott the Cow Guy, Shillady, Fox Business, regular, and regular on our show as well. And this was a fun little piece of jujitsu by Mitch McConnell yesterday, wasn't it? You see this responding to reports that his ancestors owned slaves. So I guess that's something that me and President Obama have in common. Zing. And the other thing we have in common is that we both oppose reparations. We both oppose reparations, and we are both descendants of slaves. Where do the similarities between McConnell and Obama begin and end? Who can tell? It is a point of fact, and it's a fact that was conceded in his autobiography, President Obama's, I'm talking about. In his 1995 autobiography, Dreams from My Father, Obama, whose mother was white, remember, wrote a family lore that said he was related to Jefferson Davis, the president of the Confederacy. Amateur genealogist William Reitzweiner published a history of Obama's mother's family that revealed that his great-great-great-great-grandfather, George Washington Overall, owned 2 slaves in Kentucky. His great-great-great-great-grandmother also owned 2 slaves in the state of Kentucky. And McConnell's and so on and so forth. Same deal.
We're going a little bit further back than my yearbook in high school.
Right. Yes, you're going back to pre-Civil War yearbooks. In some cases, I mean, this is where we're at. This is the silliness of some of these debates. But it was just fun to see McConnell sort of turn that question back on the D.C. press corps. Kamala Harris, Kamala. Potato, tomato.
Well, what is
Kamala.
What is the correct pronunciation?
Kamala Harris. She's a senator from California. She is a proponent of reparations. And she's hot on the trail of the president this week. Listen to this riff.
And so as a former prosecutor, I will share with you. I'm here to teach you and tell you about part of my background. I have a background where successfully I have prosecuted the big banks who preyed on homeowners, prosecuted pharmaceutical companies who preyed on seniors, prosecuted transnational criminal organizations that preyed on women and children. And I will tell you, we have a predator living in the White House. And the thing about this person is he's got predatory instincts and a predatory nature. Because let me tell you a secret about predators. They prey on the vulnerable. They prey on those who they assume are weak. They prey on those who they assume are desperate. And the thing about predators is this. They're cowards. And what we need and want in our America is a president of the United States who recognizes that her strength derives from an ability not to beat people down, but lift people up.
Yeah.
That's tiring.
Are we going to go from Obama to Kamala? It almost rhymes.
Yeah. No, I don't think so. I mean,
is she the one part due?
No, I don't think so.
Well, she's on the ascent, and Cheryl Chumley, online editor at Washington Times, writes this week that Kamala Harris is the candidate Donald Trump must beat. And I don't disagree with her. I've said from the beginning, if I could pick a candidate from their field to face Trump, it would be Joe Biden. As much as the D.C. press corps started out trying to pump up Joe Biden, people think, Joe Biden is the most difficult candidate. I don't think so. I think Kamala Harris presents the most challenges for President Trump. For more on this topic, we're pleased to be joined by Cheryl Chumley, who is also the author of the book, The Devil in D.C., Winning Back the Country from the Beasts in Washington. Cheryl, thanks for joining us. Appreciate it.
Hi, it's great to be here.
So why do you argue Kamala is the one and the one to beat?
Well, it's her style. More than you have to look beyond the poll numbers and so forth that are just glimpses in time and really don't mean anything. But if you look at all the whole field of Democratic candidates, it's Harris's style that will probably be the toughest match for Donald Trump. And it's not just her style; it's her background. You can't discount the gender and race cards that the left is going to throw. And there's another point also that I didn't flush out in my piece, but the conservative base, Trump's base, is going to play into the left's hands with Harris, because what they're going to do is they're going to dredge up her past. The scandals that she has in her past. I've already seen that on my social media pages. Whenever I mention Kamala Harris, people talk about Obama. They bring up Willie Brown and so forth, and that's just going to play into the left. It really is.
What about her record as a prosecutor and even attorney general? Now, it's mixed in some interesting ways. It's mixed in ways that create some vulnerabilities for her in a Democrat primary, particularly with this Democrat Socialist Party, that could end up actually allowing her to portray herself as somewhat reasonable and not one of these starry-eyed cultural Marxists in the general. I note, for example, a piece in the Huffington Post last week that took her to task for being particularly tough on truants, and being tough on truancy disproportionately impacted minority families in California. And so that may be something where they try to go after in the primary, but it could look pretty good to middle-of-the-road voters in a general.
Exactly. And her hatred of big business and capitalism, her reach out to the supposedly poor, downtrodden minorities of America with the housing bills and so forth that she wants to introduce, or the handout, the financial handout for housing down payments and everything. All that is going to sell really well, not just on the left, but in middle of the road America, where a lot of people still play into that victimhood mentality that the media actually furthers. So I think she has a lot going for her, that she can race against Trump and score some big points. And I just think the Trump campaign needs to ratchet up its game in terms of finding black women specifically who can oppose Harris on the campaign trail.
Cheryl, Scott Shelley here. I understand a lot of what you've just said there. And speaking about the middle of America, I unfortunately have seared into my brain her single-handed efforts of trying to bring down Brett Kavanaugh and his family.
Yep.
I think that she was the face of that fight, and I think that won't play well. I think that does bother a lot of women as well because of what happened to Brett or or Justice Kavanaugh. And I think that that will be a big hurdle for her.
I would hope so, but I don't see the climate in America right now is so divisive, and you can't discount the media. The media is just going to push all out for her, and she's going to have the backing of a lot of hefty funders. I agree with you. She is the face of Kavanaugh, and also I remember her going after Jeff Sessions for the confirmation as well, and I found her vile and vicious. But we just live in a political atmosphere right now where the media will go all out to sell deceptively a far-left candidate, and the polls will show the candidate gaining steam, and I hope people aren't deceived, and I hope people will see through Kamala Harris, because I truly believe she's going to be the candidate, and I think Trump's going to have a hard time fighting her.
Well, here's the thing, though. I mean, it's in terms of doing the SWOT assessment on her. She's got some real weaknesses, too, and if you want to, kind of suggest, as I did, that she's some sort of bridge back to Obama, personality-wise, she's got a tough sell, and I don't know if she's going to be able to modulate, or there'll be too many indelible moments between now and the general election for her to walk away from the impression she's leaving in the minds of many Americans, including, as I said, middle-of-the-road Americans when it comes to their electoral choices. She doesn't come across as cool and reasonable and dispassionate and accessible. She comes across as angry. She comes across as shrill, and and tone matters, right?
Absolutely. But I think that's something that will be worked out in the months to come. I agree with you. And if you look at, Hillary Clinton didn't come across as exactly friendly and, for the little people either, but she was the candidate of choice for the Democrats, and she came near beating Donald Trump. I just think Kamala Harris has more going for her than Hillary Clinton does. She has youth. She has a hefty field of funders who are waiting to jump in, and she's going to be able to modulate her tone. And I agree with you right now. She comes across as sounding angry, but I think that will be vetted out. I think that will be smoothed out as the weeks go by.
The other problem she has, though, too, is just and by the way, Trump is going to come to the table a lot stronger in 2020 than he was in 2016 as well, because he's got particular accomplishments and there's a particular understanding of where he is on issues that actually matter to people, including the performance of the economy as well as security at the border. But with respect to Kamala, the other problem she has is she raised her hand. Yep. She raised her hand for health insurance for people in this country illegally. She raised her hand to basically say there's no difference between an American citizen and anybody else. We're all citizens of the world. She has raised her hand to eliminate private health insurance, even as she tried to walk it back with the second interview with Tapper. So, just in terms of substantive issues, there's a lot to fear, no matter how reasonable she's able to come across.
She's a far left loon. Let's just put it out there.
There you go. All right.
Thank you.
She is. And, by gosh, I hope Trump wins a second term. And if you look at the polls, if you look at what the issues are of concern to voters, it's the economy first and health care second. And those things just stay steady. And on that, Trump wins hands down.
Well, to Dan's point real quick, I think that, Trump coming back stronger in 2020 is absolutely the case. Number two is that he is agitator in chief. If she's going to crack, he's the one that can do it to her.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Let me get, since neither Scott or I are women, I'm interested in your reaction to this question, too, because it's another part of her profile, and I wonder if it'll be something that's subtextual on social media. You mentioned Willie Brown being her political sponsor of sorts, and that could play into the left's hands if she's attacked for her relationship with Willie Brown. What about the fact that she doesn't have children?
Oh, that never even dawned on me.
Yeah, but for a lot of
I can understand why. I hate to say.
Well, but for a lot of, it's like the idea of like somebody like a bachelor running for president. Remember when Bob Kerrey ran for president, and one of the things what's the deal with the bachelor? Do we want a bachelor in the White House? There are a lot of people who still look at somebody, and I'm single without kids, who look at it and have questions about, well, why at that age doesn't somebody have a family, doesn't have a wife, doesn't have a husband, doesn't have kids?
See, I actually, now that you bring that question up, if you bring that question up on the campaign trail, I see that working in her favor, because I see the radical leftist loons, feminist movement saying, why should that be a factor? Why would you bring that up in this day and age? The thing I think that conservatives need to tread cautiously with Harris is bringing up her past about Willie Brown, bringing up little crude comments about her sexual history, adultery, any of that. Because I think even women who do not like Harris, politically speaking, will feel offended at the crudeness that can come out. And I think that's the real danger.
And plus, we're going to be having too much fun with Hunter Biden's love life to pay much attention to.
Yes.
All right. She is Cheryl Chumley. She's the online opinion editor at the Washington Times. The book, The Devil in D.C., Winning Back the Country from the Beast in Washington. Her most recent column, Kamala Harris, the candidate Donald Trump must beat, and she just explained why. Cheryl, thanks for joining us. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
And she joined us on the Turnkey.pro answer line.
Hear about the big stories of the day, then talk about them right here on Chicago.